Hello, and welcome to another episode of an Unexpected Podcast. My name is Tim, and with me, as always, we have Matt and Mick. Rainier may be joining us later on in the episode. Today, we have a pretty interesting list because it's going to relate to our topic as well. We have a list from PK, and then that's going to kind of transition into our main topic, which is about the pool system and what we would choose if we were to go up against another person and being able to choose the scenario kind of system that we've talked about in the past. So we're going to move over to the list first, of course, as we always do. And PK has that he's looking for a Durin Hearthguard Ballista list as well. But his main list is an 800-point competitive tournament that he's going to in April. So let us know how you do in that as well, PK. He is led by Aragorn with Fiefdoms and Misty Mountains. They're doing 3 rounds and using the 3 scenario pools with a veto system. So it's, like I said, we're going to talk about the veto system. The first pool is the Domination, Capture and Control and Breakthrough pool. The second is the Lords of Battle, Contest of Champions to the Death pool. And the third is the Storm the Camp, Recon and Divide and Conquer pool. There are no list building restrictions other than no blending Legendary Legions in standard armies. The first part of the list is King Aragorn on Armored Horse, who's the leader, with 9 Fountain Court Guard and shields, 4 Gondor Rangers with spears, 2 Warriors of Minas Tirith with shields, 3 Knights of Minas Tirith with shields, Angbor with 6 Clansmen of Lemidon, 2 Men-at-Arms, and 4 Blackroot Vale Archers, and a Bolt Thrower with Siege Veteran and 2 crew, along with Gwahir. It has 36 models, 4 heroes, 9 plus mites because of Aragorn, 32 warriors, 8 archers, and a siege engine. He says he wants to have Aragorn, Gwahir, and the 3 knights, and at least 6 Fountain Court Guard, but everything is negotiable. So at 800 points, you do have 2 big hitters, plus you do have the Bolt Thrower, which I know sometimes we discuss good or bad in certain scenarios. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. You have to pay for the Siege Veteran, correct?
You do not have to pay for the Siege Veteran. The Siege Veteran comes with the Bolt Thrower.
Okay, so never mind on that. I was going to say that might be a downgrade, but if it comes with it, obviously.
I will say... Oh, no, never mind. It's correct.
Okay.
Carry on.
I would consider possibly dropping the Bolt Thrower personally, and then maybe using those points for Angbor, because I get the Fearless you're looking for with the Clansman kind of a thing, but you already have that in the Fountain Court Guard, and I'd rather have a third hitter, and then that would make it a lot more difficult if you had Aragorn, Gwahir, and God, I'm blanking on his name now. I just said it.
Well, you said Angbor, who's in the list. Are you talking about Forlong?
Forlong. I'm getting my names. You know me. I can't get my names right, of course. I would rather have Forlong on horse with the points, and then add a few more troops if you're able to do so. And I just try to get the model count up a little bit, because if you had Forlong with Gwahir, with Aragorn, and then I'm actually pretty okay with the current setup as is. Maybe change the Clansmen to maybe drop a few of them and then add some Axemen to get a little bit more hitting power in there, because everything is strength 3, of course, besides the knights if they charge. That would probably be my opinion. I'll go over to Matt first if you want to give yours.
Yeah, so I was thinking about trading out Angbor for Forlong. The question was, kind of how to do it. And I guess I came out saying, maybe, maybe not. I think that Bolt Thrower is a good add to this list, because it gives this list a lot more shooting power. And I think it's the right call not to give it the automatic upgrade and save the points for people. So I guess at the end of the day, I could see, getting rid of the Bolt Thrower and using those points to change Angbor to Forlong. I think if you do that, because your Yellow Alliance, I I think you want to change the clansmen of Lamadon to who are those guys that Forlong goes with? The Axemen of Losternac, because because this is the Yellow Alliance, Angbor is not going to give his fearless bonus to anybody but the clansmen. At the end of the day, though, I guess I guess I'm not. I'm still on the fence about whether to switch those over or not. I think I'm probably happy with the way this comes out now, although Angbor is definitely squishier than Forlong, but on the other hand, he's got a strike. You end up with a clansman rather than the axemen. And the clansmen have that, the two-handed penalty, although it's mitigated somewhat by the fact that they can keep a 6. But you do have a lot of stuff that can kind of stand behind them. So if you want to keep the bolt thrower and keep the cheap Angbor the Fearless, I think you can. By the way, I think I also wonder whether changing out Angbor for somebody like Huron or Ingold or Iralas might be the better option, and just say, forget fiefdoms, let's just go all Minas Tirith and go from there. Because one issue this list is going to have, because we can no longer ally Galadriel into these types of lists, is a vulnerability to shooting, and all of the fiefdom stuff is low defense and therefore is going to be vulnerable. And I wonder if somebody like an Iralas, who gives you the march and the ability to tank while Aragorn is killing the other stuff, might be a better option with some, just some wares of Minas Tirith put in there just to kind of like be tough and hold the line, and whether that might be a better option for roughly equivalent points.
Nick?
Cool. I really like King Aragorn and Gwaihir. I think they're really cool at 800 points. So I'm glad you want to keep them. And the 3 knights. 3 knights are going to be super useful. Personally, I don't like the bolt thrower at all, because you have 8 archers and the 1 siege engine. At 800 points, with 8 archers, either you're going to face something like Harad or Elves or Corsairs or any other Gondrelist or Lake Town, or pretty much any army that has any sufficient shooting, you're not gonna bother shooting. So your bolt thrower is not gonna be that useful either. Or you're gonna face an army which will have so many models or be just so strong that it won't really care about your 1 bolt thrower and 8 rangers. So I would say I just really don't like the siege engine here. I think if you were to go all out into a lot more rangers and much higher numbers, then sure. But at the moment, I don't feel like it adds anything, especially without the swift reload. You're getting what, like an average of like 3.5 shots. 1.5 might hit. You might kill an orc per turn, which at 800 points is not really that relevant. Obviously, it's great if you manage to hit something big, but a lot of the good targets are going to be hiding behind lines, so it's very unlikely you're going to hit anything reasonable with it. On the other hand, I would say I'm kind of missing something like Madril in this list, because for any sort of Maelstrom scenarios, actually, one sec. So the scenario pool here doesn't have a Maelstrom, so technically you don't need it. So for this specific scenario pool, I would say the bolt thrower could be changed for perhaps upgrading Angbor to, as Matt said, something like Huron, and keeping a more of a Minas Tirith list, or alternatively going for what's his name, Forlong, who is also better in combat, I find, thanks to being mounted. Obviously, the list is going to suffer to a lot of shooting. So in something like Lords to Death, Contest of Champions, Storm the Camp, Recon, these are going to be all quite difficult if you come up against a shooting list. So again, on that note, if you come up with a shooting list, your siege bow isn't really doing very much. Yeah, and I would also, I guess, try to up the numbers somehow. So if you were to swap the bolt thrower for a forlong, you can probably add like 2 more models to his warband, because his warband is currently on 12. So you'd be able to maybe stick in 15. Although obviously with losing the bolt thrower, you're actually losing 2 models anyway. So your actual numbers don't change that much.
Yeah. All right. So because we haven't done this in a while, I'm going to come in with a hard disagree.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Saying a hard disagree is a little too strong. I'm going to rise to the defense of the bolt thrower. Because what the bolt thrower does, because it has, you're right. On average, it's going to have 3 shots. It'll probably hit once or twice, and it'll probably kill one thing. But when you're facing the bolt thrower, you can never be guaranteed that that's what's going to happen, because your opponent could always roll the 6, and you could just lose a hero to the thing on any given turn.
Or they could always just roll the 1 and nothing's going to happen.
You could, but as a player opposing a bolt thrower, you can't count on that, right?
No, like well, that's the thing. Like whenever I face a bolt thrower, I just really don't care about it. It's like, okay, well, that's 50 points down, whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've used the bolt thrower several times, and it has won a game for me on more than one occasion, because it's been able to kind of track over to the key thing that I needed to kill, or the key hero that I needed to, bounce off of his warg, or whatever. And it's kind of come through on a number of occasions. And the first time an opponent kind of sees that 6 get rolled and then sees, what can happen with that. And because there have been a couple of times playing a bolt thrower, and I never get the auto reload, where I've killed like 3 models in a turn. And your opponent sees that happening. It's like, oh crap, I got to charge. And objectively, maybe that wasn't the right decision for them, but the bolt thrower has an ability, much more so than like 8 archers, to pull your opponent towards you, because you never quite know when when you're going to get, when that thing's gonna reach out and just kind of knock down one of your heroes.
Okay, well, I strongly disagree.
Fair enough. All right, make the case against it.
Okay, so if we look at the pool scenarios here, so you're saying that the bolt thrower will have the ability to pull things to you. In the first pool, domination, capture, control, breakthrough. Other than breakthrough, you're starting in combat pretty much. So bolt thrower is kind of not really doing very much, unless you put it somewhere to the side, at which point, since you're good, chances are you might be risking to hit your own guys. So again, chances are you're not like you're gonna put it on an objective and then hope that no one comes.
The bolt thrower is really useful in domination, because what you do is you usually end up with one objective that's kind of toward the back of the board, and you move the bolt thrower to that objective, and it sits on it. And then if you've deployed the objectives correctly, that bolt thrower can then cover 1 or 2 of the other objectives. And what you do at that point is you go for the ones that the bolt thrower doesn't cover, because at that point the enemy can't send like just 1 or 2 figures to grab those objectives, because the bolt thrower will just kill them.
Sure.
And he has to actually send stuff. He has to send enough stuff over to hold those objectives, against the steady dribble of deaths from the bolt thrower, that you can then go and actually have your fight someplace else. Because
that's still 50 points that's just sitting back. That's not doing it very much.
5 figures that's both holding an objective and contesting 2 others, which is fine for 50. That is the best 50 points you're going to spend in a domination game, where you can then take the whole rest of your army and contest the other 2 objectives that the bolt thrower can't reach.
I don't know. I would rather
That's
just
fine.
keep one model back and then use the other four
To go and fight the other four models. I mean,
to actually go and control the other objectives and try to win those objectives in combat.
All right. Well,
okay.
I guess
obviously it's going to depend case to case.
It is. The last thing I'll just say on the bolt thrower, because this is a terrain thing. If you're playing in a tournament that's going to have significant chances for kind of elevated terrain, the bolt thrower becomes really useful in those circumstances.
Sure.
It's small enough that it can sit on top of like one of those GW, ruins of affiliate or ruins of Osgiliath terrain pieces. And just getting it those couple inches up off the ground where it can start shooting over your own lines and into the rear of the opponent is a really useful thing to do. If you're going to be in that type of terrain meta, then I think this would push the needle on the bolt thrower a little farther over to me. But with all that said, I think it's a perfectly valid strategy to say, all right, I don't need the bolt thrower. Eight shots is enough for me, and I'm going to spend this 50 points on more figures. But I would make sure that you actually get more figures out of it, which means more than 3, because 3 is what you get for that 50 points.
Yeah, but it's the upgrade. It's the upgrade as well, like Mick said, to maybe like a Huron cut. I think what's funny is I think because there's the pool system and the veto system, assuming that, let's say, Matt, you took this list to a tournament and I was against you. Well, I agree with you 100% on the domination. That's the first thing I'm vetoing, though. You know what I mean? Like I'm taking that out of the. I'm not even considering that as a thing. And so then we go on to the next set of 2, which is the Lords of Battle, Contest of Champions to the Death. I would probably take out the Lords of Battle scenario, and then when it comes to the third one, it's all kind of about movement. And so then, even though it's stagnant, and it can be great for recon, I 100% agree that thing that sits back and kind of prevents your opponent from being able to get off the board, which is a great preventer. Again, I might consider vetoing that as well. So then you have Storm the Camp, Divide and Conquer. And I'm not saying that it can't, but I would be okay with a bolt thrower if and only you added more Minas Tirith and replaced Angbower to kind of help with the shooting wars if you were to have them. And I'm not saying that the bolt thrower is specifically stuck with the army to shoot and do a shooting battle, but I'd want to see more durability in case, like Mick said, you did come up against Sir Harad and they had all those bows, and you had to try to go into that because, like we've talked about, Galadriel can't be used anymore to kind of fix these little shooting war battles. So if somebody on the evil side decides to take like a Corsair or a Harad or one of those kind of armies that really shoot well, or even just any other army that shoots well, I think it'll be difficult for the bolt thrower. So I would say I'm on Mick's side on this, but I think if you took enough defense 7, front rank, back rank kind of a situation, then I would be more lenient towards the bolt thrower based on the scenarios that we've been given in the veto system.
Can I just add on top of that?
Yeah.
In that, if let's say, like, I don't mind the bolt thrower if you have, let's say, 50 models, but if you only have this many, then okay, what are you in theory fighting against? You're fighting against enemies that have way more bows, who don't really care about your bolt thrower. Like even in something like domination, sure, you have your bolt thrower back, but then someone is now taking over multiple objectives with 50 models, and they can just shoot your bolt thrower away. They can just shoot 1 or 2 crew members, and you're not even shooting anymore. So then the other alternative is, let's say you're fighting against 50 or 60 models again. Well, just because you kill 1 or 2 with your bolt thrower won't change anything.
All right. Well, why don't we do this then? Because our topic for today was going to be scenario pools and which scenarios to veto. Why don't we use PK's list as our test case, kind of going through the scenario pools, and we can start with the 3 that he's actually playing.
Yeah.
And we can talk about which scenarios we would want to keep and which scenarios we would want to delete. And I'll go through it because I think Tim, your advice is correct, that if you keep the bolt thrower, you kind of want a tougher front line. And I think what I would do if I was going to keep the bolt thrower is I would drop Angbor the Fearless. I would put in Iralas, who's the same number of points and gets you March.
Yeah.
And then I would kind of change over the Clansmen of Lamadon, Men at Arms of Dol Amroth, Blackroot Vale to some combination of equivalently pointed, or I think it's going to be equivalently appointed Warriors of Minas Tirith and Gondor Rangers with spears. And it's probably going to be about the same number of points. I'm not going to do the exact math, but what it's going to do is it's going to up the front rank defense against shooting from 5 to 7.
Just to point out, I'm not sure you actually need that second march if that's what you're doing, because
that's true. You got
already has a free one, so
that's true. But that's fine. Then I'm going to use Iralas as a tank to
sure.
To go into people and call heroic defense
Sure.
while Aragorn is killing stuff. And and I mean, the other advantage he gives is, if I need to go someplace where King Aragorn isn't, then I've got a march to get there quickly. So anyway, so that's my plan. And you guys can do, kind of your, so you guys talk about what your change would be to the list, and then we can kind of talk through from the different perspective of your changed lists.
Oh, I like that Iralas too. It just
yeah, but you're getting rid of the bolt thrower, right?
Yeah, Mick, there's going to be 50 points. There's going to be 50 points added to whatever we want.
I mean, yeah, if I'm getting rid of the bolt thrower and I'm allowed to go fully Minas Tirith, then I would just go with Hurin and a stronger front line.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd probably go Hurin and then make the front rank Fountain Court card if I had the points. And back rank.
Hurin also is really cool here in that you can actually send Aragorn into danger. You can have Aragorn die. You don't really have to care about Aragorn, and then you still don't lose your general points because you have Hurin alive.
Yep.
Well, you lose the general wounding points. You don't lose the general kill points. But I think Hurin also gets his extra die, right? From
he
Aragorn?
Does. Yeah. Plus on top of that, he gets to reroll for King Aragorn's spawner. So Hurin actually ends up rolling like 5 dice on charge when he's mounted.
Yep. No, I mean, this would be a good army to put Hurin in. There's no question about it. So
I think I'm team Hurin with Fountain Court Guard and then supports.
All right, fair enough. But yeah, the point of this is not the point of this is just to kind of give different perspectives on which scenarios you're going to drop off. So we've got Nick and Tim's list, which is more of a fighty, charge in and killy type list, and my list, which has a bolt thrower in it that gives me some options that the other list doesn't have. So we'll go with that. So with that said, do we want to pop into the with that said, do we want to pop into the pools and discuss maybe the 3 pools that he's got up here and what we would do?
Sure.
Are we going to go based on the list that he has currently submitted to us then? Or are we going to go based on one of our opinion lists?
Well, why don't we do this? Because we've got the 2 different metas of how we would change this list. And then why don't we also talk about the list he has submitted to us in case he goes with this? So we give him some actual practical advice that I'm sure will be put out after this tournament occurs and will be useless to him. But at least he will have understood that we have made an effort to try and help him.
Isn't this tournament in like April or something like that?
Yeah, April.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. So this may actually come out in time. All right.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Nice. So in that case, should we be putting his list against, let's say, an archetypal horde and like an archetypal elite list to see?
Yeah, let's do an average kind of like.
Yeah.
Let's assume the person is average skilled, and we'll do that. The person takes what we would consider a decent list kind of scenario at 800 points.
Sure.
All right. So first set is domination, capture and control, and breakthrough. So let's say you're against. Let's pretend we'll start off with his list first, based on what he's given. So you're against. Let's start off with a horde army. So you're against a horde army with this list. Which one are you vetoing, and which one are you trying to keep out of domination, capture and control, and breakthrough?
So like opponents got like, let's say 50, 60 models.
Yeah, let's say that 50, 60.
Sure.
We're not going to go Goblin
Yeah.
Town kind of nonsense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. So I think if you're going against a horde list, which would be 50, 60 models on up to Goblin Town, I think domination is the one that you veto, because you want to bring the objectives kind of close, and avoid having objective in one back corner of the board and another objective in another back corner of the board. And I think capture and control and breakthrough both do that for you. So I think you're with his list as he has it constructed against a horde, I think you're vetoing domination.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, because in capture and control, unlike domination, if you manage to break the horde, they can actually lose those objectives. So
Yep.
yeah. And breakthrough, you can hopefully use your terrain well enough to defend yourself.
I think we should do this in 3 tiers, which is elite, mid-tier, and horde. I think that would be a kind of fair way to judge the. So, for example, elite will say is anything under 36 models, maybe 32 models, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll say mid-tier is 32 to 45, and we'll say, I don't know, 45 plus is kind of upper tier. So let's go to mid-tier. So let's say you're going against a 32 to 45 model army. What are you probably wanting to veto in this situation?
I probably don't mind any of the scenarios then. Any of the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, well, okay, I think maybe against mid-tier, the way he has it constructed, and I think probably the way I was constructing it with the bolt thrower, I think I then change my my veto from domination to breakthrough. And here's why. Breakthrough puts an awful lot of points on the objective that's in your backfield. And I think which is probably what you're going to be holding with your bolt thrower, because your bolt thrower has to start 6 inches on. The very first thing it does is it moves 6 inches up, and it sits on the back objective in capture and control, or one of its crew members does, or in breakthrough, and it holds it. And there's enough points in breakthrough that kind of the heavy stuff is going to be heading your way. And I think probably the way he has it constructed and kind of the way I have it constructed, I'm not sure I kind of want that pitched battle type thing. I want to be able, because I've got Gwei here who can basically go to any place I want. I want to be able to say, all right, I'm not going for this one particular point. I'm going to go over here to the left objective in capture and control, and I'm going to grab that, and then I'm going to jump Gwei here someplace else, as opposed to kind of knowing that it's all going to be about the points in these 2 points in each side's backfield. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I sort of agree. Plus, if we were to use the list which Tim and I constructed, so that was Huron instead of the bolt thrower, I would also say that because of having like 3 big threats, well, two really big threats and one sort of relatively big threat with Huron, I think you're fine playing domination and capture control too, but breakthrough, it may be a little random sometimes. It may be a little tricky to break through certain aspects. So yeah, I would probably also veto the breakthrough.
See, I would think with your army, I would want to veto domination and go with breakthrough, because you've got an awful lot of firepower that you can concentrate to actually break through, and you've got a bird that can kind of go over the top if you need to get to it.
But then I feel like in domination you have enough of a combat prowess to go into different places that your opponent might not be able to sustain themselves in all of those places. So you're kind of building a minor advantage throughout the board.
Well, So the downside of that is that you have with Huron and Aragorn together, you want them in the same place. So
Well,
I don't.
within 6 inches of each other.
Yeah, but I don't think you want to go in like 3 different directions. I mean, the problem with domination is you could end up with something where you have to go in like 4 different directions.
Sure.
And you don't have a lot of shooting, so it's not like you can kind of cover an objective or 2 with fire to deny that. So I don't know. My thought with your list would be to veto domination, keep capture and control and breakthrough, so I could keep everything together and keep all my combat power, kind of fighting within that same 6-inch ball to try and kill as much as I could. That's what I would think.
Oh, yeah. I don't think either is wrong. Like, personally, I wouldn't really mind any of those scenarios on against like a force that's like 30 to 40 models anyway.
Yep.
So I think they're all fine.
Yep. But PK, for your purposes, I think we're saying veto breakthrough.
Veto breakthrough, yeah, I would agree with that.
I think for me, it would depend on whether or not the bolt thrower was in the list. I think that would have a huge impact on what I would probably choose. I kind of like the breakthrough, to be honest with you, but I think, again, for me, it depends on the bolt thrower. But we'll go to same scenarios, but with elite, so 32 or less models. What are you guys vetoing?
So I think with 32 or less, I then flip. So I think the advice is the same on vetoing breakthrough for my build and for PK's build. And I think then I'm flipping at that point to mixed camp, and I'm vetoing breakthrough for your build as well.
I feel like if he's gonna have less than 30, then there's gonna be some really big heroes there.
Right.
So I think I would veto breakthrough too.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Veto breakthroughs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because at that point you want to use mobility to kind of be where the big. I mean, you've got Gwei here that can kind of go wherever it wants to and victimize whatever it wants to, and Aragorn's got perpetual march. So I think at that point you're using your mobility to kind of be where the heavy stuff is not.
Yeah, plus Aragorn can also just go into combat against one model, surrounded with some other things, call it free heroic combat, move somewhere else. It's like, you just have those jumps. You have so much movement.
Yeah, I mean it's not like you can't go in and handle the big stuff with you can, Aragorn, Huron, and Gwei here. It's just you want to break it up so you're not fighting all of his big stuff at once. I think you've got enough mobility to, if you force him to disperse, take it out in small packets.
I'm kind of struggling to see what an elite list with less than 30 models at 800 points here is, other than like there's a Sauron in it.
Well, maybe it's like Iron Hills.
Maybe there is a Sauron in it. There's a Sauron in it. There's the multiple model or multiple monster Moria list. There's an all heroes list. There's the Vanquishers of the Necromancer, right?
So like you're probably trying to keep your Aragorn safe from Sauron. Yeah. Like he's gonna be killing much faster than Sauron is capable.
Right.
So yeah, just keep feeding Sauron with one guy in turn if you can.
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing I think probably the better time to talk about it is in the next scenario pool. So we'll talk about that aspect next.
So the next one is Lords of Battle, Contest of Champions, and To the Death. So we'll start off again with the Horde, which we're going to say is 45 plus models. I know it could probably be considered more than 45, but it's just easier to do that kind of balance where 45 plus. So let's say you're playing 45 to, let's say, 60 models. Lords of Battle, Contest of Champions, and To the Death. What are you vetoing with the list that we've talked about?
So it's pretty obvious that your opponent is going to try to veto Lords. So on that basis...
Not necessarily, but go on.
Okay, so on that basis, I would probably want to play Contest over To the Death. So I would probably start by vetoing To the Death. But if they vetoed first, then they would probably veto Contest, at which point I would still veto To the Death. it's tricky, but like all three are good, but I would say probably that might be your weakest.
So the reason I was kind of questioning that he's necessarily going to veto Lords of Battle is there. And I agree with you. In most cases, that's what's going to happen. But there are some cases, like if you're playing dwarves, where I think they veto to the death, because they don't want to have to waddle across 2 feet of terrain into your bolt thrower,
sure,
to get to you.
But we're talking about a horde at the moment, so like 40, 45 models or more.
Oh, okay, all right, sorry.
Yeah.
Never mind. Forgot about that.
Yeah, I think I'm Team Mick on this one. I think you take away to the death, so that Contest of Champions with Aragorn or Lords of Battle, considering you're against a horde, I think that's kind of the way you go, is veto to the death.
Are we talking about his list?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are certain things where I think that's wrong. One of them is if you're facing like a goblin town. If you're facing a horde army that also does not have a banner, because this list does not have a banner, the one that you want is to the death, because you're not at a point disadvantage. You can just castle in a corner, and you've got your bolt, or somewhere near the back of the board, and you've got your bolt thrower that can just rack up points for you, and eight shooters that can just rack up points for you as he's advancing towards you. I think, and I'd be leery of Contest of Champions against something like a Goblin Town that can, even if Gollum with the ring, if Gollum with the ring and the Goblin can get into Aragorn, you've got a problem.
Oh yeah, of course. But didn't we say earlier we're not really gonna cover Goblin Town?
Yeah, I think we'll try to do like because I think with Goblin Town we go into like a whole discussion of Goblin Town by itself.
Right. Well,
yeah, Goblin Town wrecks you in every scenario anyway. So
I'll generalize this to a scenario where your opponent does not have a banner, because I think this advice. I mean, because obviously if you're going into a fight against like a Balrog and a whole bunch of goblins, you're going to veto Contest of Champions. There are certain situations where the scenario that you want is actually to the death, as opposed to Contest of Champions.
Yeah.
Sure.
And there may be scenario. Yeah. Right. Okay. I mean, there may also be scenarios, well, probably not against a horde, where I think you probably want Lords of Battle against most hordes, but yeah.
And also to the death starts the game quite far away. So if you're playing against a very shooty heavy army like Harad, or
you don't want that.
Or like Corsairs or Elves, you don't want to play to death.
Yeah, and more than likely, by the way, if you're playing one of those scenarios, they've got a banner. So if you're playing a scenario where your opponent has a banner, you just want to veto to the death off the top, because you don't have a banner in this list.
So in that case, they will probably veto Contest, and you're gonna end up playing Lords.
Yep. Probably
fair
so.
Enough. Yeah.
Yep.
Same thing, but mid-tier list. So we're going to say we'll say 32 to 45 models. So what would you take 32 to 45 models? Which one would you veto?
Kind of still depends if they have a banner. So if they do, then you probably don't want to play to the death. If they don't, you don't mind it that much.
Yeah, I actually am wondering if the answer is always going to be, if they have a banner, you veto to the death on this.
Okay,
possibly.
So we can just say that for a general. Even in, do you want to say that even for when we get to the elite part? You want to just say?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Any other talking points on mid tier, or you think that's pretty all right? Elite.
I guess I'd say one other thing, and that's if you end up in a situation where to the death is an option, or where your opponent does not have a banner for whatever reason. This comes down to the bolt thrower, no bolt thrower thing. I think if you have the bolt thrower, I think you're more likely to consider to the death than you are, Contest of Champions, Lords of Battle.
agree
So you
with
may
that.
actually end up vetoing either Contest of Champions or Lords of the Battle against, kind of depending what you're going up against. If you're going up against a really high defense army like dwarves, you may want to be vetoing Lords of Battle because you don't have a lot of strength 4 stuff in this. If you're going up against something that has super tough hero like a Balrog, and this was, I guess, the other point I wanted to make. The other vulnerability this list has is magic, right? Because it has no counter magic ability. So if you're going up against a high magic opponent, like an Angmar type Witch King, lots of guys with paralyzed type thing,
or like a couple of ring race with a Mortarless.
Yeah, exactly. You may want to veto Contest of Champions
Yeah,
because you
definitely,
don't want to have Aragorn like shut down by
Mhm.
transfixes.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, he's probably gonna get shut down in every scenario, but in contest, that's just a loss.
Yeah, I mean, if they've only got one caster, he has a kind of a chance to make it through. And it may be like if they've got one caster and that one caster is the leader, you may want Contest of Champions in the hopes that you can kind of cut through the line to get to that caster and kill him before Aragorn's will runs out. That may be something that you want, where like you're playing Isengard or something like that, and you think you can cut through the line of orcs and get to Saruman with Aragorn, or jump over the top with Gwaihir and get him. Because at least Contest of Champions, if the caster is the leader, you know where he's going to be, and he's going to be someplace you can get at him early on in the game.
I think Gwaihir is going to be a huge influence on if you're against magic.
Yep.
All right. So last part of this one, Elite. Anything to add to Elite? What you would veto? Same thing with the banner.
It's probably the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this one comes down to
if they have a banner and they have an elite force, then it's almost like you bounce off each other, and then whoever had the banner wins.
Yeah. So I think, to summarize, I think probably this is true regardless of the army size. If they've got a banner, then you're probably going to want to veto to the death. If they've got a lot of magic or kind of superhero like Balroggy type thing, you're going to want to veto Contest of Champions. And then if they've got like super high defense army like dwarves, you want to veto Lords of Battle.
So in that case, if your opponent's army was Balrog with a banner, you screwed it away.
Yeah, that's true. Or more likely dwarves with a banner, right?
Sure.
And probably dwarves with a banner, you got to sit down there and scratch your head and see what else he's got in the army and decide whether your ability to kind of kill stuff with the bolt thrower is going to outdo the extra point or two that he's going to get from the banner. And I suspect that in that circumstance, you're going to want to say, I'm going to veto to the death, because at the end of the day, you still have Aragorn with the pointy sword of doom, and you still have Gwaihir, and you still have a bolt thrower to punch through dwarven armor. They can all do wounds in Lords of Battle.
And finally, the third scenario for his tournament, which is Storm the Camp, Recon, and Divide and Conquer. We'll start off with, again, the Horde list. So with a Horde list against these, what are you vetoing?
Recon probably. Especially if they're like 20 models over you. It's gonna be quite tricky to catch everything, and you're gonna have to do a big split. Even if you have the ball thrower, I would veto that, because the ball thrower might not always be able to shoot through terrain. Yeah, that's probably my choice there.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think against a Horde army, it's kind of hard not to veto Reconnoiter. And let's think about his list in Divide and Conquer, right? He's got 4 warbands because the bolt thrower counts. And you've got Aragorn who can get places quickly. There's a couple different ways you can set this up, right? You can set up bolt thrower, and you can either have Aragorn and say it's either, I think, Aragorn and bolt thrower in one corner and Angbor and Gwaihir in another, or you just say screw the bolt thrower and put Aragorn and Angbor in one corner and just march that, basically march almost all of your army toward the center of the board, and then put bolt thrower and Gwaihir in the other corner. Bolt thrower just sits there and says, march toward me and I will kill a bunch of you as you're taking me down. While Gwaihir's like, I'm just going to flap to the center of the board. See a bolt thrower. And I'm wondering if that's the breakdown for divide and conquer, which I think is a perfectly valid way to do it.
So both thrower and Gwaihir in one, and then
Right.
the rest of the army in the other. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. I think that makes sense because the rest of the army gets the free march.
Yep.
So they're moving fast, and Gwaihir moves fast too.
Yeah, and then your opponent has to say, all right, I've got to commit enough guys to get through the bolt throwers shooting and then kill the 3 guys there. Or I can ignore it and have that thing kind of go 6 inches toward the center of the board and then shoot at me for the rest of the game, which is not a particular. Neither of those are kind of great choices, because he's either got to commit more than 50 points to take the thing out, or he's got to ignore it and have it probably kill more than 50 points over the course of the entire game.
I guess mid-tier now. So mid-tier, how does that change things?
So mid-tier, I would probably be getting rid of Storm the Camp because I personally just hate the scenario.
Yeah, I think so too. Although, I mean, I will say this isn't a bad army to play Storm the Camp, because you can.
It's fine.
You can put the bolt thrower, leave it in your camp, and say this is the camp guard, and it will shoot the random. It's perfectly fine to shoot down the random cavalry or two that's going to go toward your camp, and the rest of the army, including Gwaihir and a marching Aragorn, just says everybody else storm the camp.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is actually pretty well equipped to storm the camp. And I think that's true of my version too. I think in your version you could do it, although you don't have the convenient bolt thrower that can kind of stand back and be the camp guard, but you could put 3 or 4 regular guys back there.
Sure, and you also have the added bonus of having a third hero trying to storm and break things through.
Yep.
Yeah, I just personally really don't like the scenario. So, in all honesty, I'm probably fine playing any of them. So, if let's say you vetoed Storm the Camp, what would your opponent veto? If they had, let's say, 40 models or something like that, they would probably veto something like Divide and Conquer, and you'd play Recon.
Yeah. Although there's
which is fine too.
Yeah, which is okay. I mean, I guess and there are going to be caveats to this, right? Like if you're playing all mounted Rohan, obviously you're still going to veto Recon.
Yeah,
you're going to veto Reconnoiter at any rate, any points level, or any number of figures. But yeah, at mid range, you probably veto Storm the Camp. Although I guess I would say if you have some reason not to do it, if you have some reason where you want to get rid of Reconnoiter, or if you want to get rid of Reconnoiter, you could do that, and you could play and win Storm the Camp if you needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And does anything change with Elite for you guys, or?
With Elite, you're probably fine with all of them. So
yeah.
Again, Storm the Camp, just because it's a miserable scenario to play. Although, then again, I guess in Elite army, you're fast and you have more models.
Do you assume your opponent, if they have 32 or less models, is avoiding Recon? You think that's the one they're taking off the board immediately?
Yeah, I think they probably are.
Yeah.
I think you want to. I mean, against Elite, I think you want to play Recon because you have lots of mobility, you have some mounted stuff, and you have a bird that can
so then they will take off Recon, which leaves you with a choice. What do you prefer playing, Conquer or Storm?
Or Storm the Camp? I I wonder if you're playing against truly elite, where they have a small number of. Remind me, storm the camp. You need to get twice as many figures in the enemy's camp to take it.
Yeah, but if they don't have any, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let me just double check.
That is what I am doing as well.
Yeah.
On the camp. Let's see.
So if you're playing against like a 4-figure army, I don't know. I guess I'm having trouble coming up with a reason to take storm the camp over divide and conquer. So maybe you just they veto reconnoiter, you veto storm the camp, and you're playing divide and conquer. I actually think this is a pretty good setup of the way his army is laid out to do divide and conquer. So I think I'm good with that.
To control your opponent's camp, you have to have more models entirely within your opponent's campsite. And so, yeah, it's not actually double. It's just more.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, never mind.
So we'll move on to the other 3 pools that were not in his tournament. But PK, please do let us know in the comments on a future video when you end up going to the tournament. Did you make any changes that we suggested? If you did, how did you end up doing, and did our advice come through for you at all? We'll move on to the first pool that wasn't there, which is pool 1 in the system, which is Maelstrom of Battle scenarios. So
heirlooms gone.
So, as Mick alluded to, heirlooms of ages past, hold ground, and command the battlefield.
Oh, but really, you're going to veto heirlooms when you've got a big giant bird?
But you don't have a banner.
Yeah, but still, that's 1 point in that scenario, I think. And you've got a big giant bird that can go anywhere and look anywhere.
Now, this is against Horde, keep in mind. This is against...
Yeah, actually, let's have a look at it from a different perspective. What will they veto? Like, probably your favorite scenario here is hold ground against pretty much any enemy, right?
So this is where it depends on the army size, right? So if we're going Horde, he probably wants to keep hold ground. So you're probably going to cancel hold ground in that scenario because he's got, a bunch of models, and that's... You don't think so?
I think no. I think I would keep hold ground. I would want to play hold ground.
I think you may against a horde. All right, in particular, a horde that has an ability to come on in lots of different places, and lots of them do.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want command the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Goblin Town would love command the battlefield in this thing. So would a whole bunch of other horde armies where they just have a whole bunch of war bands. I'm going to bring on one here. I'm going to bring on one on this side of the board. I'm going to one on that side of the board. So anyway, against the horde, I mean, depending on the horde, but I think against most hordes, I think you're vetoing. You may be vetoing command the battlefield.
Yeah, I agree.
Over heirlooms, because at least with heirlooms, you've got enough mobility that you can kind of. You've got enough mobility that you can do one of 2 things. You can either get to a bunch of objectives quickly and you're going to find it. You can certainly grab one objective and sit on it with most of your army, and nothing's going to get that. And even if he finds the objective someplace, you've got a bird, right? Sure. And the bird can just flap over to wherever the objective is, kill whatever that horde happens to have around the objective, and then take it.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing. Like against a horde, you definitely don't want command the battlefield, and so whether you like or not like heirlooms, that's not really even relevant.
Yeah,
it's like you're just vetoing that.
And does this opinion change for you at all for mid-tier or elite, or is it about the same for you?
Yeah, so I would say if it's something like mid-tier, then I would check if they have a banner, because there's often going to be situations where, let's say, you both have tapped 4 objectives and you are standing around 1 each, and then nobody wants to tap anything, and then the banner points may make a difference. Then isn't there something about if you are holding the objective, but your opponent has a banner and has broken you and killed your leader, then you also may not be winning, something like that? Or am I confusing that with points?
I guess I'm not understanding the question.
Yeah, I'm not either.
No, I'm just trying to figure out what were the actual VPs for
which scenario?
For heirlooms.
So okay,
so you score 6 if your force is in possession of the banner. Then you score 1 for wounding
not the banner, the
killing
relic.
it.
You mean the relic?
Sorry, the relic. So
obviously, if you get 6 points for a banner, then that changes things dramatically.
Yeah, of course. So if, let's say, you are controlling a relic and your opponent has killed your general, broken you, and controls a banner, then it's a draw.
Yep.
But in any other situation, basically whoever controls the relic wins.
Yep. So part of this. So I think there's an argument to be made, I think, for vetoing heirlooms or perhaps even hold ground against a mid-tier opponent. And I think that kind of depends on what your opponent has. If your opponent has an all-mounted army, I think you're just vetoing hold ground because he's just going to get to the center before you can.
Sure.
And there's a certain point, especially if you all right. So this is another siege engine thing, where one of the things that the siege engine allows you to do, or the bolt thrower, and let me actually double check on this with divide and conquer,
is deploy it somewhere.
Deploy it somewhere where it can hold 2 different quadrants, because you can deploy it at the midpoint of the board on one side, and then you can put like 1 crewman to the left and 1 crewman to the right, and that siege engine has then kind of taken over 2 halves of the board, and your opponent then has to do the same thing. I mean, he can, if he rolls well enough, if he rolls the right thing, he can bring on a warband there. You can bring on a warband to defend it if you need to. Or if he brings like his entire army on around that siege engine, you're like, all right, I'm going to take my army and I'm going to go on the other side of the board.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to control that. And then I'm going to march with Aragorn down to the other side and contest the other thing. So that bolt thrower, if you have it in your army, and if you are playing Command the Battlefield, gives you kind of an option where you may want to be taking that over something like a hold ground.
And does anything for you change for elite?
So I think for elite, I am vetoing heirlooms because I both want a whole bunch of, I want to be able to overwhelm with numbers in the center of the board. And on Command the Battlefield, I want to force him to divvy up his army into small little packets that Gwei here can devour.
Yeah. If you get there first, or even if you don't get there first to the center in hold ground, you have enough to pile into the center and then destroy everything that comes.
Yep.
So yeah, heirlooms is just the most random one.
Yeah.
So you might just lose just because they found the objective first.
They found the objective and they handed it to the Balrog, or
or they
like
found the
that.
objective and they have a banner and then they just hiding in the corner and you're never getting
exactly.
them.
Agreed.
This is kind of a side note, but my biggest problem with heirlooms is that it very much turns into, I'm going to control this one scenario or this one piece. You're going to control that one piece. We're all going to try to pick it up or try to get rid of it on the other 4, and then it's just going to be a battle of, protect the fort essentially. And I just don't. That's my biggest problem with heirlooms, is that it's supposed to be played out as like a random move across the field kind of a situation, but it ends up just being one person camps one of the things and the other person camps another.
Well, unless someone rolls a 6 earlier.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but other than that, I mean, I like the thought process of the scenario, but it just turned into something else.
So that's hardly unique, though, right? I mean, Seize the Prize, right? I mean, Seize the Prize is a worse example of that, because that's basically it's heirlooms where everybody knows where the relic is.
That's not a fun favorite.
Yeah, and I mean, well, all the complaining that gets done about heirlooms, I do enjoy that. I do enjoy playing that scenario, and I always enjoy playing that scenario more than I enjoy playing.
Oh, because the chaos of it really made like it's such a stressful mission because you're saying to yourself, if I set up here and he sets up there, it's like you both know you kind of don't and do want this, so it creates this havoc, and especially if you pick it up and let's say your opponent's end, like let's say Gua here went to go pick up the relic and he got it in his opponent's end, and then oh no, his entire army's there and my army's on the other side of the board, so it is a great scenario to really make you have that kind of chaos feel to it. So I do like it in that regard.
Yeah,
Also,
I mean, go ahead.
yeah, if you have if you have a lot of fast moving models like bat swarms and things like that, that scenario can be actually really cool in that you get to tap things just before your opponent gets to it, and then tap something else just before they get to it, and then you end up tapping everything around the board and then leaving just the one that you have controlled as the untapped one.
Yeah, or your ability to like either with a flying model or with a cavalry model, like do a heroic combat, get around to the back and like sneak in and take the one that he thought he was guarding.
Yeah.
There's the,
and then roll 6, so that doesn't help.
I mean, there's a randomness there. There's a randomness to this scenario, but there's also a whole lot of strategy to this scenario. It's just it's not chess strategy, right? Where there are certain moves that are going to bring you victory. This scenario is poker strategy, right? Where you come up with a plan, you try and have the best plan that you can come up with to work with the probabilities and what your opponent has. And sometimes it's still not going to work. And then you have to completely change the plan in mid-fly. And that's kind of what I enjoy about the scenario is I enjoy the randomness of it. And if you go into it like you go into a game of poker, knowing that sometimes the cards will just fall the wrong way, and despite you doing everything right, you're still going to lose. But that's okay because that's part of the fun of the game. Then it's a good and fun scenario to play.
I like that this scenario is. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's the only scenario where the relic is worth so many. I don't think there's another scenario where the points are that valuable for one item to where
seize the prize.
Oh, it seize the prize the same thing?
Yeah.
I don't remember the VP.
I think seize the prize may be worse because I think if you get the prize off, you get 7
points.
Oh,
7, you're right. Yes.
It's 7,
yes. Yeah. So what I like about those two scenarios is that it's all about that one thing. And that's what makes it so interesting is that it's such a battle for that one thing. And even though it'll stink when you lose, it's that concept of like this, it's like this desire for the ring essentially, right? Like everyone wants the ring. And I just love how it kind of has that feel to it where it's like life or death to get that item. But all right, so the next pool is object scenarios. So seize the prize, destroy the supplies, and retrieval. So if you have the army list that we've mentioned, in a horde scenario, what are you vetoing?
It will depend how fast the horde is, because you're actually pretty good in seize the prize here. With Aragorn, with Gwai here, with the 3 knights, you can get there pretty quickly, and you can potentially pretty quickly grab the prize and try to run off with it. So it sort of depends. Like if they're a horde, they're probably not a full of cavalry horde. So I probably want to play that scenario.
Yeah, I don't think there's any situation where you don't with Gwai here and Aragorn. I don't think there's any situation where you don't want to play that scenario.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess even if they were an all-mounted Rohan, you'd probably be okay with it too.
You were going to be on that prize first turn, almost no matter what, because Gwai here can start basically put his. I mean, you can call the heroic move with Aragorn for free. Gwai here goes up, and if he doesn't have enough move to get on the prize, he can put his zone of control on the prize.
Or Gwai here even goes over the prize, blocks some stuff, then Aragorn goes on the prize, some knights go on the prize.
You can do that too. It's just you got to call a march to do that. I mean, if you had Irolas in this list, what you would do is call move with Aragorn, march with Irolas, and that gets you everything.
I mean, you can do a move with Gwai here and march with Aragorn.
Yeah, but Guahir's only got 12 inches.
He's got 12, yeah.
Yeah, so he can't actually
Sure.
get to the far side of it. You need the march to get Guahir to the
Sure.
far side of it.
But I mean, if your opponent doesn't have a way of getting to the center first, then you just don't call a heroic move. You just march
Which he
with Aragorn.
yeah, which he may not in a
Yeah.
horde army.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any if you're playing a horde army with this army, you veto destroy the supplies. Because a horde army
Yes.
has a decent chance to get at least some of your supplies just by
Yeah.
sheer numbers.
Mid-tier for the scenarios. Anything changing?
I'm just gonna double check retrieval because I just forgot what that does.
It's capture the flag, which is going to be another great one for you because you've got Guahir and Aragorn.
Yes.
Guahir is such a great one for this scenario. Like Guahir just solves a lot of, and that's why if anybody remembers from previous episodes when we did the duels, people are always bringing Guahir into their list because he just solves so many issues of that big fighter, the mobility of him, even the high fight value that he brings with him, and so Guahir is just a fantastic addition to any army list, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know he's a great toolkit to throw in there.
Especially with Galadriel gone now, it's almost like he's gone up a tier. He might be the best. Can you think of another? And I know it kind of depends on each army, but as a general rule, can you think of a better model to ally into, even though it makes you yellow?
Not off the top of my head.
I think it might be
well, at least on the good side.
On the good side is what I was. Yes, on the good side. I almost think that besides maybe Legolas from Thranduil's Halls, but I would probably rather have Guahir than Legolas in most lists, to be honest with you. So I almost think
I quite like Glorfindel these days.
Oh, Glorfindel's great.
Yeah, because if there's going to be more magic on the other side, thanks to Galadriel not being there, Glorfindel doesn't really care that much.
I don't know. Guahir for me is he kind of covers everything, and then especially because they gave him the the 2 attacks with the 1 on the charge. But yeah, well
I mean, as we're talking through these scenarios, Guahir just with his ability to fly just gives you so many tactical options that Glorfindel doesn't.
Yeah, that's true.
All right.
So in this pool against mid-tier army, I don't think you really care about any scenario.
Yeah, I think
whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And against elite, same.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I wonder if the answer against mid-tier is still I wonder if the answer against mid-tier is still veto destroy the supplies, just because just because you could still lose some supplies here or there.
Yeah, or just because you randomly lost your Guahir in a silly way, and then you can no longer destroy the supplies.
Yeah. But this is a scenario pool where I think his army kind of works.
Yeah.
I get, well, okay. So I guess maybe the other option would be is if you're against heavy magic, like 2 or 3 ring wraiths, whether you actually may want to veto seize the prize, just because you're afraid of having whoever gets the prize be compelled into your opponent. Whereas that's less of a risk and destroy the supplies. Maybe actually you're better off vetoing retrieval in that situation. I'm not 100% sure. Something to think about.
If anybody has anything to say about elite, we can move on to the last pool. Pool 6 is unique scenarios, which is Fog of War, Clash by Moonlight, and Assassination. So we'll say Horde first, of course. Which one would you veto against a Horde?
Assuming it's a non-shooting Horde, I think I'm vetoing Fog of War.
I think I'm vetoing Fog of War as well.
Okay.
Because it's got that whole, that against a Horde, he can, if there's 3 or 4 different terrain pieces on your side of the board, he can send a significant contingent toward all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, mid-tier.
It sort of depends on what heroes they have in them, because Clash by Moonlight, if you have your bow thrower, might be a bit risky because of your random siege veteran who can just die and give away points.
Well, yeah, I mean the flip side of that is that I mean you can protect the siege veteran by just keeping Aragorn standing next to him, and that bolt thrower in Clash by Moonlight is deadly with the +1 to wound.
Sure, but if your opponent has like 20 bows,
Yeah, I mean,
well,
if your opponent has 20
yeah,
bows or 20 throwing spears, then that changes
yeah,
the needle. But if you've got significant shooting and he doesn't, I think
yeah,
Clash by Moonlight may
yeah,
be
that's probably
something that you
fine.
want.
Yeah, so this one will pretty much entirely depend on your opponent's bow fire. If they have a massive advantage, then you don't want Clash by Moonlight. If they don't, you do want it. So then you veto one of the other two.
Right. I think that's right. And I don't think there are any circumstances though where you're vetoing assassination, right? Because Gwahir's your assassin.
Yeah, you're fine with that.
Yeah.
All right. Elite. Any changes to that, or pretty much the same thing?
I wonder. So I'm wondering if elite or an army you're going to significantly outnumber. I wonder if then you veto Clash by Moonlight and you go with Fog of War
Yeah.
because you have a lot. You do have a lot of mobility in kind of all the incarnations we're talking about here.
Well, so then if you veto Clash by Moonlight, they're gonna veto Fog of War.
No. You. Oh. I see. Then they. Yeah, and then you play Assassination.
So then you
is
play
fine.
Assassination, is fine.
You know, I mean, like I said, I don't think there's any problem with this list playing Assassination in any against any type of army, just because Gwahir.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess the only issue with assassination is that if they're trying to assassinate your siege veteran, in which case you're putting your bolt thrower somewhere near the back of the board, and they have to run across the entire board to get to the damn thing being shot at the whole time. And by the time they get there, there's probably an Aragorn waiting to meet them.
All right, so that's us going over the scenarios. We're going to go back to one of PK's questions at the beginning as a little help for him. He said he was looking for a Durin Hearthguard Ballista list, and Matt has actually made one. So, Matt, if you want to go over that.
Sure. And PK, just so it's clear, this episode is all about you today. So
he's getting special treatment. We reviewed his list. We reviewed everything around him.
Hopefully, he's actually still listening.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, this is all the love is going out to you, PK. So you're welcome. But anyway, so the reason I was going to do this is we happened to look at your list and see your question, and I happened to be playing a game against Evan today, where I had done up a Kingdom of Khazad-dûm list with Durin in it, and was trying to keep the model count up reasonably high. So I'm going to throw this out here and solicit advice from the rest of the panel, and hopefully you'll be able to get something out of this as well. So this is actually this is an 800 point list, and this is Kingdom of Khazad-dûm, and the leader here is Durin, and with Durin are 14 Hearthguard, and the second warband is the King's Champion, and with him are 2 Heralds, 1 Vault Warden team, 6 Dwarf Warriors with shield, 1 Iron Guard, 1 Dwarf Warrior with bow. And warband number 3 is the Dwarf King. With him are 6 Dwarf Warriors with shield, 2 Dwarf Warriors with bow, and then the last warband is the Dwarf Ballista, and I added in, because the Dwarf Ballista only comes with a siege veteran and 1 guy just for insurance, I added in an extra Dwarf Warrior, which brings me up to an extra Dwarf Warrior crew. So there's a crew of 3 there just in case there's losses. And that brings me up to a total of, I believe, 40 models at 800 points, which is not, I mean, it's not a dwarf horde, but it's, kind of an average number of models, and it has 3 strength 6 heroes in it, all of which are pretty darn tough at either defense 8 or defense 9. And it does have the ballista, which was the other criteria PK wanted in there, is he wanted a dwarf ballista in there. So I'm kind of curious on your thoughts about that.
So was it just one ballista? Just double check.
Just one ballista. One ballista.
Yeah, I think overall it sounds pretty solid. You have good numbers. You have a ballista. You have strong heroes. You have March in there.
Yeah, because I got a king.
Yeah. You have a king. Yeah. I think it's overall a very solid list.
I always do dwarf lists, and because I very much enjoy Durin's Bulk a lot, and I always do what you did, and I go dwarf king, king's champion, and whether that be Durin or some other version of a leader, but I tend to go with Durin. And so that's my usual 3. I go with, I think, 375 points for those 3. And it's like my biggest issue has always been the might from dwarfs, because they, with that list, you only have 7 might.
7 might. Yep, that's right.
And that's the biggest problem I've always found. And obviously he wants a ballista, so that's going to affect, taking more troops where you might have gotten them in. Obviously he wants the ballista, so that makes sense. I think for having the ballista in, I think that's about as good as it's going to get. I like the inclusion of Vault Warden team, just in case you need to pin something down. I don't know that you can make that much better with everything that he's preferring to have. I think 40 models is good, considering you're taking the 3 heroes at their point cost plus a ballista. So there's over 400, I think 435 points, if I'm correct. So I mean, that's for not even having troops, even though the ballista is kind of like having troops, you're essentially paying over half the budget just for heroes / little playthings. So I think, and the Hearthguard are 13 points a piece, so those guys aren't cheap either. So I think Matt's done very well with this, considering what he's been given. And I definitely think against the right thing. Do you know what, and I know this is more for him, but do you know what Evan's taking today?
I don't.
Okay.
The last time I played, he was playing Army of Laketown with Gwahir and Saruman and Galadriel, Lady of Light.
Oh.
Which is it's a good list. It's probably the best way to keep Galadriel, Lady of Light in play, and it has a lot in it. I mean, so I guess PK, a couple of things to think about. One is beware getting over invested in Hearthguard, because they are pricey. And I think if you're going to do the Dwarf Ballista, I don't think you either want or need 18 Hearthguard with Durin. I think, I mean, you probably want a dozen, or at least a dozen or more, but I don't think you need to go all the way up to 18. You could also put in more Vault Warden teams. I mean, I'm figure limited here because we only own one.
I am always a fan of more Vault Warden teams. I love Vault Warden teams. I think point for point they make up for it.
Yeah, I think so too. But there's one in this list because I only own one. So yeah, I guess those are my 2 thoughts. There's an example. It's probably with 40 figures, it's pretty much on the money for 800 points.
For sure.
And then hopefully it'll work out for you.
Yeah, I would say if you wanted more might, you could just swap the ballista for a captain. If you wanted more fighting prowess, you could swap the ballista for more Vault Warden teams.
Yep.
But ultimately, that's pretty much what you're gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, is that there's those specific inclusions of Durin, the Hearthguard being the points cost that they are, and then you add in a ballista, but you still need more might, so you have to throw the king in to get to 7.
Yeah, you have to have the King's Champion regardless. So
Yeah.
like King's Champion and Enduring are already 300 points that you can't really not include.
Yeah.
Right. And you need the march, and the best way to get the march is
the
the king.
It's the king.
Yeah, so that's
So-
Plus the
375.
fight,
Yeah.
the fight 6 is super underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, that ability to have everyone fight 6 and above is phenomenal.
Mhm.
But all right, let us know, PK, if you do end up taking Matt's advice and using that list, if you make any tweaks to it, along with the list we've gone over. Anybody listening, if you want to leave any posts about your list as well, and any ideas you'd like for us to go over, we are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you'd rather just listen to us there. And let us know in the future if there's any kind of topic in particular. So not just an idea for an episode, but if there's like a new series you might be interested in hearing about as well. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
All right, bye.
Bye, everybody.